What happens when you take a comfortable cruiser-style e-bike and load it up with luxury features like automatic shifting, a mid-drive motor, and nearly maintenance-free parts? Today, we're putting the Evelo Omega to the test to find out. Cruiser-style e-bikes are built for slowing things down. They're approachable, comfortable, and great for soaking in the ride, whether that's down the boardwalk, to the park, or around the neighborhood. With cruisers, it's less about the destination and a little bit more about enjoying the journey. Now, Evelo aims to deliver a premium version of that experience with the Omega Cruiser. On paper, this bike is loaded with premium features you don't often see in this category, but does it really live up to the hype? I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and that's what we set out to find out. The standout feature here is the Enviolo Automatiq transmission. Instead of shifting gears, the system does it for you by continuously adjusting pedal resistance to match your effort and the terrain around you. No clunky gear changes, no guesswork, just hop on, press the power button, choose your pedal assist level, and ride. It's easy for beginners, and for experienced riders dealing with stiff knees or tired legs, it's a stress-free upgrade. Backing that up is a Bafang M410 mid-drive motor. It's rated at 600 watts, peaks at 980 watts, and produces up to 105 Newton-meters of torque. That's plenty of power for climbing hills or carrying extra weight, but it never feels like it outweighs your own pedaling, and its assistance comes on smoothly and naturally. If you want to skip pedaling, the thumb throttle is there too. The motor pairs with a Gates Carbon CDX belt drive. That's a clean, quiet, and nearly maintenance-free system. There's no grease, no chain stretch, and thousands of miles before you'll need to think about replacement. Combine that with the sealed Enviolo hub, and you've got one of the lowest maintenance drivetrains available. Powering the Omega is a 48-volt, 720 watt-hour frame-integrated battery. Evelo advertises up to 60 miles of range, but riders who want more can add an optional 696 watt-hour rear rack battery for as much as 100 miles. That's impressive endurance for a cruiser, and charging is pretty quick thanks to the included 3-amp charger. Other details add to this bike's polished feel. There's a high-power LED integrated up front, and an LED taillight that keeps you visible from behind. Stopping power comes from Tektro Auriga E-Comp hydraulic disc brakes with a 160mm front rotor and a 180mm rotor on the rear. The frame is hydroformed 6061 aluminum with a lightweight aluminum fork, and Evelo includes full composite fenders for all-weather protection. Contact points are just as refined. You have ergonomic lock-on grips, a Cell Royal memory foam saddle, and wide 610mm handlebars. Comfort pedals from Wellgo and a sturdy kickstand come standard, and then the bike rolls on 26 by 2.8-inch Innova tires with puncture-resistant Aramid belts for stability and fewer flats. Now, typically the bike comes with a standard seat post and a high-rise stem, but our test bike came with all 3 of Evelo's compatible comfort accessories. We have a Cane Creek Thudbuster suspension seat post with 50mm of travel. The stem was replaced with a Connect Comfort Plus suspension stem with 20mm of travel. And we also got the super wide and squishy Cell Royal Cruiser saddle. We'll talk more about those later, but they felt great, and we definitely recommend the upgrades if comfort is one of your top priorities. Our test bike measured 67.5 pounds with those upgrades and with the battery installed. It has a single frame size that fits riders between 5'4" and 6'2", and carries up to 350 pounds. Heavier riders aren't excluded either though. Evelo invites them to reach out for fit guidance. And while the bike and battery are not UL certified, our contact at Evelo explained that both are built to the same standards. And then there's the warranty to cover, which puts 4 years or 20,000 miles on the frame, battery, motor, controller, and display. That's nearly unheard of in the e-bike industry and just goes to show how much confidence Evelo has in its design. So when you put it all together, the automatic shifting, the smooth mid-drive, the maintenance-free belt, and the comfort features, as well as the long-range options and that standout warranty, you get a cruiser that feels like it was designed to take the stress out of riding and replace it with pure enjoyment. But is the Omega really the blast cruiser you'll ever need, like its name implies? Stick around because we put it through our full series of standardized tests to find out.
All right, here's our Class 2 speed test for the Evelo Omega. Right now I'm pedaling it without any motor power. We're gonna see where the speed kind of goes. Again, it's got that automatic shifting system there, so don't have manual control here. We'll let the bike do its work. Going about 9.5 miles per hour, so between 9 and 9.5 and 10 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and kick on that motor into eco mode. All right, so from the jump, you can kind of feel it working. Just doing a little bit, making it a little bit easier to kind of kick things forward here. You can kind of hear a little hum to the motor, a little bit of noise when the drivetrain system kind of changes the ratio a little bit. But you can see it picks up the pace a little bit, going upwards of about 13 miles per hour or so. Let's see kind of where we're going to settle in. Yeah, about 13 and a half or so. Go ahead and bump up next to Tour. Same thing there, not much change, everything kind of consistent. Motor noise, relatively the same. It just feels like, you know, it's a little bit easier, going a little bit faster. Pretty instantaneous, not a surge ahead, not blowing off a line, but noticeable as soon as you hit that power increase. If we go upwards about 15 miles per hour, and bounce between 15 and a half. Moving into sport now. Again, just more of the same, just a little bit faster, a little bit easier to pedal. Not a lot of changes in terms of what I can hear. I am having to pick up my cadence a little bit, make sure to keep some adequate pressure applied towards the pedals. But even here, bike's doing most of the work as we are already approaching the 20 mile per hour speed limit, getting close to about 19 and a half. Moving to Sport Plus. Not really feeling much of a change at all. It's probably kind of like reaching some of its limits. Feels very similar to Sport once you've already got it up to speed. Might have some differences in acceleration from a dead stop though between the two. Let's finish things off in Boost. And yeah, kind of the same thing. It's still just Class 3 modes have kind of all felt relatively similar as we're right around the 20 mile per hour Class 2 limit. But let's go ahead and run it again in Class 3 mode, see if anything changes. All right, so now we have changed up the settings. We'll see how things kind of change here. So far, starting off in Eco, kind of similar to last time. Bouncing upwards, about 12, a little over 12 miles per hour, 12.3 or so. Moving into Tour now. Same thing, you can instantly feel it's a little easier to pedal, but other than that, there's not any drastic changes. Kind of still sounds the same. It's not overly drastic in how the acceleration kind of changes up. On your left. But yep, things are climbing here around 17 miles per hour in Tour. Move through the assist level one more time, up in Sport now. And similar to before, going upwards about 19 miles per hour, a little bit over. Moving to Sport Plus. This one going upwards of about 21 miles per hour. I'll pick up my pace just a little bit. I'm trying to not push much harder. Want to kind of keep it consistent, but if you add a little bit more power to it, it starts going about 22 and change. All right, finish things out here in Boost mode. Well, pretty good acceleration. It's still requiring like some pretty consistent push on my part to get it upwards about 24 miles per hour, but it's got the range to do it, which is really nice. Yeah, between 23, 24 miles per hour or so up in Boost. So yeah, overall not too bad. Let's run the throttle test and then we'll jump back to John in the studio. Okay, here is our Class 2 throttle test. On your mark, get set, go. So as we're going along, the Enviolo system is going to be shifting as needed, help accommodate that drivetrain as it's pushing the bike forward. So it won't be the speediest 0 to 20 time we've recorded, but the bike will still do the work, because usually all I gotta do is hold that throttle down, going upwards about 18 and a half, climbing up to 19, maybe we can get a little pause, see if it just needs to reset at all in the gear range. Yeah, it's going about 19 miles per hour, still slowly climbing, picking its way up there. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're gonna get it 20 or not, but yeah, I've been bouncing around 19 and a half.
All right, the goal of those tests was to see how the Evelo Omega performed across its pedal assist system and how its throttle behaved. As you saw, we ran the bike in its stock Class 2 setup, which caps both pedal assist and throttle at 20 miles per hour, and then again in its unrestricted mode. Unlocking it through the display settings essentially makes it a Class 3 bike, giving us the chance to push it a little faster. Starting with the Class 2 test, our baseline with no pedal assist landed at 9.9 miles per hour. Kicking it into Eco mode brought us up to 13.6, Tour mode hit 15.2, and Sport jumped us close to the cap at 19.6 miles per hour. Then Sport Plus and Boost were right there too, topping out at 19.4 and 19.7. The takeaway here is that the bike's powerful motor is being held back a bit by the Class 2 limit. It reached top speed in the third assist level, and the higher modes simply couldn't push past the 20 mile per hour ceiling, although we would expect a difference in speed when riding uphill. With the restriction removed, things opened up. Eco measured 12.4 miles per hour, Tour reached 17.4, Sport hit 19.3, Sport Plus climbed to 22.6, and Boost carried us to 23.8 miles per hour. That spread shows balanced, predictable programming with smooth steps up in power. The throttle, which is something rare on a mid-drive e-bike, felt safe and controlled. It reached the 20 mile per hour cap without being punchy, and the automatic shifting system made acceleration feel smooth and natural. Overall, the Omega felt intuitive and consistent in both modes. It was plenty capable, but never overpowering, and spot on for our expectations for a cruiser. One of the big questions we always want to answer is, how far can you really go on a single charge? Evelo advertises that the Omega's 48-volt, 720 watt-hour battery can deliver up to 60 miles of range, so we set out to see how that claim stacked up in the real world. In our testing, the results lined up nicely with Evelo's estimate. In boost mode, what we call the minimum range test, we covered 36.5 miles before the battery gave out. And then in eco mode, the maximum range test, the Omega kept rolling for an impressive 68.6 miles. That's well above average for the cruiser category, where similar bikes we've reviewed have landed close to 30 miles on the low end and about 60 on the high end. So what's driving that above average performance? Mostly battery size. The Omega's 720 watt-hour power pack is significantly larger than the category average of 595 watt-hours, and that extra capacity translates directly into more time in the saddle. Now, it's worth pointing out that the Omega's motor was a bit less efficient than average when looking at the number of watt-hours it used per mile, but the larger battery more than makes up for that. Of course, these results came from testing the bike in its stock Class 2 setup with a 20 mile per hour speed cap. Unlocking the speed limit and riding faster will almost certainly bring the range down, while lowering current or speed limits through the display menu, we'll look at that later on, could stretch your range even further. For context, most riders we hear from are taking relatively short trips of around 10 miles. That means you can expect several leisurely rides before even thinking about recharging, even in the highest assist level. And when it is time to plug in, the included 3-amp charger should have the 15 amp hour battery topped off in roughly 5 hours. Our next challenge for the Evelo Omega was the Devil's Backbone. That's half a mile of climbing with an average grade of 8% and 217 feet of elevation gain. It's a tough course that gives us a great sense of how a bike handles steep, sustained climbs. We run 2 passes, one using only throttle and another in the highest assist setting while pedaling. Let's go see what happened in the test. You can hear our test rider Justin's thoughts along the way, and we'll talk more about the results once we get back here.
All right, we are out at the Devil's Backbone hill testing the Evelo Omega, which has a mid-drive motor from Bafang and an internal gear hub in the rear. So, I'm not shifting at all. We are in throttle. I don't have a ton of expectations on this. It's kind of more of a laid-back kind of cruiser style bike. It does not feel by any means like overpowered on the throttle. So we'll see how this does. Before this first section, we got up to about 15 miles an hour. We're cruising right at 8.6 right now, but it is gonna make it up that first steep section. Let's see how much speed it can gain before the next section, which is even steeper. So I'm up to 12.6. Looks like that's about as fast as I'm gonna get. As I make this turn, I'm at 10.4, 9.4, 8.5. Sometimes these internal gear hubs don't quite have the range needed for like a throttle test when you're doing a mid-drive. But this isn't doing too bad. I mean, I'm kind of bottoming out right about 8.4 again on this next section, 8.3. So we'll make this turn and see if it's got enough juice to make it to the top. Get that turn as best I can. Around now is where a lot of these types of bikes end up dying and not making it up. So at this first checkpoint, the lamp post, we are going 9.5 miles per hour. So not super fast by any means, but so far getting there. As far as motor noise goes, I can hear it, but it is pretty quiet. I hear that rear hub engaging more than I do the motor. I did hear it shift at the start when I started on throttle to get to the, the easiest gear, the lowest gear for that. And I'll let you listen through this next section. Right here's super steep, and then we'll probably pick up a little speed. So yeah, we're going just about 10 miles an hour now, and I'm assuming you can hear that a little bit on the GoPro, but probably not too much. And so no, it looks like, I probably shouldn't say this and knock on wood, but it looks like we're gonna make it to the top. Not a barn burner by any means, but the fact that it's getting there is really nice. Again, it's a mid-drive motor with a throttle, so it doesn't have my input to amplify, and so it's really just kind of running on its own, which is kind of a disadvantage for this type of motor. But we're gonna finish. We're gonna make it to the top at 9.1 miles per hour. All right, we're back out on the Evelo Omega, now doing the pedal test, again on max assist level. And we're hitting right about 16 miles per hour before this first hill here. And see what that internal gear hub does, if it kind of downshifts a little bit. Right now we're about 12.5 miles per hour, 11.8, 11.3. We're gonna bottom, looks like we bottomed out right about 11.1 miles per hour on that first section. This next, we're getting up to 13.9, 14. So you kind of got up to about 14.3 before this first turn. And 11.4, 11.2, 10.9. So we're gonna kind of bottom right about that 10.8, 10.7 as we make this turn here. Didn't have to hit the brakes much. We'll see what we get to before this lamppost. I will say, as I climb, I find myself kind of wishing I could downshift a little bit, just a little bit. We crossed that 11.2 miles per hour. It's not bad. I am having to push a little more on the pedal, which is normal. I say right about average for mid-drive. But if I could just shift down one more gear, I'd have just a slightly more comfortable cadence, I think. Just make it a little bit easier, but it's still not bad by any means. I'll let you listen to the motor now. So nice and quiet on that motor. The engagement is very smooth and responsive, very natural feeling as I climb. And the more I've gone up the hill, the more I've realized, like, if I can actually back off just a little bit and it will still give me good output. If I push more, it gives me more, but not a ton. So we'll see what this scores as we finish at 10.9 miles per hour.
As you saw, the Omega handled both parts of the test successfully. Using only the throttle, it reached the top in 3 minutes and 9 seconds, averaging 9.6 miles per hour. With pedaling in boost mode, it actually finished a bit quicker, clocking in at 2 minutes and 34 seconds with an average speed of 11.8 miles per hour. In both cases, the bike felt steady and controlled. The throttle's power delivery was relatively reserved, but it still exceeded our expectations, especially considering that some other cruisers we've tested would have tapped out before reaching the top. Pedaling gave us a natural, active experience without feeling exhausting, which is exactly what we want from a cruiser with a mid-drive motor. For comparison, we've only tested one other cruiser-style e-bike with a mid-drive at this new hill test location. That model, despite being a bit lighter and using the same motor and transmission, couldn't make the climb on throttle alone. The Omega cleared it and landed right in line with that bike's pedal test result, so it clearly did a solid job. Justin did note that the Enviolo Automatiq system felt a little limiting during the pedal test. Riders concerned about that may want to look into the optional Automatiq CO controller, which is a $50 add-on that gives you manual control over the cadence range that informs the automatic shifting system. But all told, the Omega proved it can get you up tough hills, whether you want to pedal or simply lean on the throttle. Next, let's talk braking. All of our brake tests are performed by Griffin. He is 6'1" and 230 pounds, so we know the results reflect real-world stopping power. The process for this test is simple. We bring the bike up to a 20 mile per hour speed, hit the brakes in a controlled and consistent way, and then measure the distance to a full stop. We repeat that process 3 times and then average the numbers. As I referenced earlier, the Evelo Omega uses Tektro's Auriga hydraulic disc brake system. This setup includes 2 piston calipers, a 180mm rotor up front, a 160mm rotor in the rear, and a motor cutoff feature that kills pedal assist or throttle power as soon as the levers are squeezed. Our average stopping distance came in at 20 feet and 8 inches for this bike. Compared to the cruiser category average of 21 feet and 2 inches, the Omega was slightly quicker to stop, even though it's a heavier bike at about 68 pounds versus the 52-pound category average. That performance reflects the quality of the Auriga system. When we tested an earlier version of the Omega with zoom brakes, it took nearly 25 feet to stop. The upgrade shaved almost 4 feet off, and you can really feel the difference. Griffin noted a strong initial bite and smooth, reliable modulation that made it easy to stay in control. Bottom line, the Omega's brakes inspire confidence and get our stamp of approval.
You know, I remember growing up, you could hear people compare things to a Cadillac when describing something a little bit nicer, a little bit more premium. And though I don't hear that expression as much anymore, you know, like, oh, this is the Cadillac of couches or whatever, I do think it's kind of what comes to mind here with the Evelo Omega. It really is a little bit more refined, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more of a premium experience. It's kind of the Cadillac of the cruiser style e-bike with just a few extra enhancements you just don't commonly see, and it really does kind of help break the mold of what we see on a lot of cruiser e-bikes. So let's kind of break everything down, dissect it in terms of fit and comfort and the features that you're getting here. And let's start with fit. So Evelo bills this as being a bike for riders from 5'4" up to 6'3", and I think there is some validity to that. You of course have these steps through frame, makes it very easy to mount or to, you know, stop and move forward when you need to. It's got a fixed stem here, but it starts at a pretty high angle, which I kind of like. You can always rotate the handlebars down or up to kind of help with the fit, but as a 6'1" rider, you know, I'm feeling pretty comfortable in the saddle. I've got a very nice upright position, again, thanks to the sweep of this handlebar. And with 32-inch inseam, I've got all the leg extension I need with about 9 inches of adjustment that you can make off the seat post. So a good amount of adjustability there, even with the fixed stem setup. And overall, I do think it is a pretty comfortable ride. Now, in terms of comfort, it does have a fully rigid fork, so you don't have suspension that comes aboard. I personally don't mind that on something that is more upright. Don't feel I always need suspension. Sometimes the weight savings or a little bit crisper handling are worthy trade-offs for me, but there are a lot of other people who are not in that camp, and with that, you can find ways to enhance it. Evelo did send us one of their comfort focus packages. So this one does come with a Connect suspension stem here. We're also on the Thudbuster suspension seat post, 20 mil of travel here, 50 mil underneath, and this is the upgraded saddle as well, which is very thick and very plush. Some memory foam in there, so that can enhance the comfort if that's something that you are, concerned about or focused on. I find like, this setup right here is all I really need for a cruiser experience to just make it even a little bit more comfortable if you are riding around, hitting some of those cracks in the road. It's gonna make things pretty nice overall. And again, just touch points are pretty solid. You got some ergonomic grips beneath you. Handlebars a little bit on the narrow side, but that's also, I've got broader shoulders, so maybe just something I'm more noticing. But overall, you can definitely enhance the comfort if you want to, or you can keep things in stock setting if you're okay with fully rigid suspension. So let's talk about the tires as well. So the Innova 26 by 2.8 inch tire, kind of another area you can sneak some comfort in there as well. A little bit wider of a tire than normal, still has a street friendly tread. So once you get a little momentum behind it, it rolls really easily. Type of thing you don't have to fight against it, won't feel too sluggish or anything like that. But of course, with that little bit of extra width in the tire, you can run a little bit lower pressures, make the ride a little bit softer if you'd like to. But overall, it's a good tire, good traction. Decent puncture protection as well. So all in all, pretty good setup. Again, I like some of the features that you'd get here. I still love a mid-drive motor with the Enviolo automatic shifting system. It is a lot of fun. It's very user-friendly. If you haven't been in the saddle for a long time, it's a setup you're going to like because you don't have to think too much outside of just picking your level of assist that you want. And then the bike's gonna do the rest of the thinking and shift when needed, kind of just based off, the terrain and how hard you're pushing. You can always download the Enviolo app to kind of tinker and get the cadence that you prefer, which is really nice. And then once you're set there, again, the bike's gonna do the work. You just enjoy the ride and adjust power as is needed. Some really cool technology there. And then of course the clean setup of the Gates belt drive, and it's a long lasting as well, with a lot of people reporting thousands of miles on the setup. Just overall, again, befitting of something a little bit more premium, a little bit more luxurious, that overall Cadillac feel. Now in terms of the power, you've got a very powerful motor, but with really good and more precise kind of tuning and programming to it. I think it's befitting of a cruiser experience. On cruiser style e-bikes, I want to make sure I've got the power I need to pick up the pace a little bit or to hit a hill with confidence. And you can definitely do that on the Omega. And then of course, just the uncommon ability to, expand the battery range, go into a dual battery setup, not something you see in a lot of cruisers. So really, I think Evelo's done a good job on the Omega with everything you get and the potential ways that you can expand and build on the platform. And then just one final note before we wrap the on-bike ride quality portion here. In terms of its handling, I think the bike actually does kind of strike a decent balance. It's the handlebar, again, a little bit more narrow, but it's not overly darty or anything like that. I would say it's kind of quick. And then, of course, with a step-through frame, you're going to have a little bit of natural flex in there, of course, as we remove that top tube out. It's noticeable, it's there. I don't think it's egregious by any means, and this is really not the type of bike I'm looking to take corners very quickly. So I think overall, if you're kind of sticking with the ethos of the ride, it's overall pretty solid handling, feels fairly stable beneath you. Again, some of the benefits of that 2.8 inch wide tire, just kind of nice to have all that on board.
All right, let's talk a little more about how the Evelo Omega feels to ride, because this is where the bike really shines. We've already covered the motor's engagement, but I want to emphasize just how smooth and natural it feels. The 600-watt mid-drive paired with the Enviolo Automatiq transmission really does what it's supposed to do. You just hop on the bike and go. There's no fumbling with gears, no distractions, just a simple, seamless ride. In a world where a lot of e-bikes are pushing complicated apps and menus, it was refreshing to see something this straightforward. That said, for riders who want more control, the Omega still has a good amount of customization available through its display settings, and you can also dive in a little deeper with the Enviolo app if you want to. Comfort is another area where the Omega impressed us. Its step-through frame makes it approachable, and the bike fits a good range of riders. With a 17-inch standover height, a long seat post, and either the standard fixed high-rise stem or suspension stem upgrade, it works well for average to taller riders, though those on the shorter end may find the reach to the bars a bit long. If you're under the recommended height range, Evelo's Galaxy Lux offers a similar setup in a smaller frame, and we have tested that bike, so be sure to check out our review. As I mentioned earlier though, our test bike included all 3 of Evelo's optional comfort upgrades: the Royal Cruiser saddle from Cell Royal, a Connect suspension stem with 20mm of travel, and a Cane Creek Thudbuster seat post with 50mm of travel. Together, those upgrades did exactly what they were designed to, by soaking up small vibrations and taking the edge off bigger bumps. They do add cost to a bike that already sits around the $4,000 mark, but we found them worthwhile. We would, however, like to see more color options at this price point instead of just the one. Overall, the Omega delivers a smooth, stable, and approachable ride experience that matches its premium positioning. All right, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the display here. So of course, in the center we have the speedometer, and then there is a color-coded pedal assist system. So as I increase, you'll see that we get different blues, orange, and then sort of a pink with boost. Up at the top, you've got a few icons that are grayed out right now, but if I hold the plus button, that will turn on the light system, dims the display, and then you can see the icon up there. But I'll go ahead and turn that back off. So we've got a battery charge bar at the bottom here with a percentage-based indicator, which is always nice. And then we've got some ride data that will scroll through here at the bottom, which you can switch between with the power button in the middle of the control panel there. So you've got odometer reading, we have the max speed that we've ridden, we have an average speed, we have an estimated range based on the pedal assist level. Actually, looks like that's not changing. Interesting. So keeping going, though, we have a cadence meter, we have ride time, we have a trip computer, and then we are back to the odometer. But then if we want to dive into the settings menu, we're gonna hold the plus and minus buttons. And so there's actually like a couple of different menus here. Number one, we have a brightness level for the display. We have the auto off setting, so that if you don't turn the bike off, this is how many minutes the bike will remain on before it automatically turns off. We have a clock that you can switch between 12 and 24 hours and then change the time. And then we've actually got 3 themes for the display. So if I remember, I'll show you those at the end of the video here. But if we scroll down, you can choose between 4 or 6 assist levels. That includes the PAS 0, and then we have the ability to reset the trip computer. But if we go here to other, this is where more of the detailed settings are. So we have 4 menus that you can see we're scrolling through at the top. If we go back to that first one, you can see some similar things that what we had before. You can reset the trip computer, change between metric and imperial units. There's one of the grayed out icons on the main display will light up if you need service, and so that's something you can turn on or off. There's a sensitivity setting. There's a password that you can set up on startup, and you can reset that if you need to. But let's go over to the next one. We have wheel size, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend changing unless you do swap out tires to something drastically different. Speed limit here, this is where you can go up to the unrestricted mode, which I'm actually not going to dive into here. That's a little complex. We've got some battery info. If we go in here, really just some information. Same with the controller. So this is sort of like back-end stuff that you're not really going to need to worry about. But then if we keep scrolling through, we have a language setting. We have, again, another way to change the theme for the display. And then if we go over here, this is really kind of the big thing where you can dive into the speed limit and current limits for the pedal assist levels. So you can see that right now they are all set to 100%, but if you go in, you can customize those as needed. And same thing with the current limit. So these are again at 100%, but same deal with the sliders that you can adjust individually. So, okay, but let's go take a look at those themes. We will head over here. Let's take a look at the sports theme. I believe holding plus and minus. Yeah, okay, so before we had a circular indicator, this one has this sort of different setup. And then if we go back into the settings menu, I'm actually just gonna change it here instead of diving into all the details. Let's see what the middle one looks like. Again, plus and minus, and here we go. Yeah, a little bit of a different organization there, but that really covers it. Let's go ahead and continue the review. Let's wrap things up with the Omega's pros and cons, starting with what stood out the most. First off, this bike is just incredibly easy to use. Thanks to the Enviolo Automatiq shifting system, you can literally hop on and ride with no gear changes to think about. And with the addition of a throttle, convenience is always at your fingertips. The ride itself feels smooth, natural, and well controlled. That 600-watt mid-drive motor paired with the Gates carbon belt gives you power when you need it, but it never feels overwhelming. Add in the belt's durability and low-maintenance design, and you've got a drivetrain that should last thousands of miles with minimal fuss. Range is another big win here. With a single battery, the Omega already outperformed most of the other cruiser-style e-bikes we've tested, and if you want even more, the optional dual battery setup pushes it even further. We also have to give Evelo credit for their industry-leading warranty. That's 4 years or 20,000 miles on the major components, which is huge peace of mind. Comfort and stability round out the list with predictable handling from the rigid fork and wide 2.8-inch tires, plus the option to add upgraded comfort features like the suspension stem and seat post. On the downside though, the single-sized frame is best suited for average to taller riders, so shorter riders may need to consider the Galaxy Lux model instead. And at this price point, we'd like to see more than just one color option. But overall, these are relatively minor gripes, and the bike really does bring a lot to the table. When talking about this bike with my fellow reviewer Griffin, he called the Evelo Omega the Cadillac of e-bikes, and while that phrase may not carry the same weight it did decades ago, it does paint the right picture. This is a bike built for comfort, refinement, and ease of use, aimed at riders who want a premium experience. As we've seen throughout testing, the Omega lives up to much of its promise. The Enviolo Automatiq shifting system makes riding fun and easy, letting you focus on the world around you instead of switching gears and messing with tons of buttons. Paired with the smooth mid-drive motor and Gates carbon belt, it feels natural, capable, and refreshingly low maintenance. This bike also outperformed many of its peers in range, proved reliable in braking, and showed that it can climb steadily whether you're pedaling or just using the throttle. No, it's not the fastest hill climber, but it's consistent and dependable, and we think those qualities are highly appealing. Our critiques are relatively minor here. The single frame size may not work for shorter riders, and with a price of around $4,000, we'd love to see more than just one color option. But overall, the Omega is easy to recommend for those seeking a comfortable, easy, and premium experience. For leisure rides, long-distance commutes, or simply adding more activity into your lifestyle, it definitely delivers a luxury spin on the cruiser category. As always, you can check out the Evelo Omega directly through Avelo's website or read a more detailed review on ours. Links are down below in the video description. Please be sure to use that first link to help support us if you do end up making a purchase. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments section, would you be likely to add the optional rear rack and extra battery, or any of the suspension and comfort upgrades? Feel free to send us your questions as well, but thanks for taking a ride with us today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Evelo Omega.